So a big issue that me and my team have been facing is after a call, internally or with a client, we spend a ton of time taking the actual notes that was taken by our AI note taker and turning them or storing them into our CRM, but also like turning them into actionable tasks and setting them up within our CRM, even though they're pretty clearly outlined, and the AI tool does a good job at extracting those like next steps and those things that need to be done based off of the content that was covered in the call. So what I'm doing here is I want to bridge that gap by utilizing n8n, which is a phenomenal automation and AI integration platform. And so what we're going to do is we're going to basically take that once, so we use Gemini. So once Gemini, but it could, or it could be Fathom, it could be any other AI note-taking tool. Once it sends that email, we're going to extract or trigger the workflow once that email is received by that note-taking platform. We're going to extract the information, and then we're going to want to store it as a file or a link or shareable link, and then B, actually create the tasks and assign the necessary people and store them into our necessary, location in our CRM. So to start off, what I want to do is I want to just kind of like map this out how it would work. So what I like to do always to start is I like to think about, okay, what do we want to do here? So we're going to want, the first thing we're going to want is we're going to want this document link to be stored in our CRM. So store the meeting note. And then secondly, we're going to want some sort of actionable task to be created from the content of the meeting. So now we're going to create tasks. Right, and then the third part is we're going to want to actually store the tasks in the corresponding location of our CRM. So to keep things easy, I'm not going to go into and show you our CRM, but we use ClickUp. ClickUp, just as a quick snapshot, very robust, lots of different stuff going on there. And I'm still wrapping my head around it, but for the most part, me and our executive team, we store our personal tasks and the most meaningful tasks in one centralized location, so we can kind of keep track of what each one of us are doing and not getting lost in the sauce in terms of like all the different spaces, all the different things. We run everything through our own centralized space and location, and we create tasks for each other within there, and then those kind of manifest across different platforms. But that's like the centralized, the heartbeat of our CRM instance. So what I'm going to do is we store in this space, we store the actual meeting notes, we store the actual tasks, the tasks that we want to do. So that's where I'm going to be storing everything, in this one space. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to take a Gmail. Let's say for the trigger, it's going to be a Gmail node. And then we're going to want to, for filters, we're going to want to filter for the specific email. And if we go to my actual email here, you can see I was playing around getting this set up, but let's find a meeting note. So we use Gemini, like I said, and as you can see, each Gemini, the meeting notes get sent by this particular email. So what we would do here in n8n is we would go to our Gmail node. I kind of already have this configured. We would have the actual email here. This is my personal email that I have, but we would have this Gemini notes email set up so that whenever Gemini sends that meeting notes email, we can then, it would trigger the workflow explicitly only when it gets an email or that email from this domain. So to keep going, I have it already set up just to kind of save time and get right to building, but we're going to have the Gmail trigger, and within the Gmail, you can see it comes with a link, a quick overview, and then the actual link to the document. So what we're going to want here is we're going to probably want some sort of extraction. Let's see, did I forget anything? So filters email, and then we're gonna actually want, do we want any other filters? We're gonna want to download the attachments / get the link. Okay. So from here, we're now gonna be looking at extraction. So I like to, at this point, extract the information that we need. So this would be, I would say, attendees. We want to know who attended the actual meeting. We want to know, what else would we want to know? What else would we want to know? Let's think. We want to extract the summary notes. We're going to want date. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think for the most part, that's good. So let's change this color to red. Okay. So now, once we have extracted the information, we're now most likely going to want to have some sort of routing mechanism. So this is where in n8n, if you know how to use n8n, this is where you would have some sort of like if or switch node, which allows you to route the documents accordingly. So for this sake, I think we're just going to focus on one use case. Something that you could do is you could have an if or a switch node that, you know, sends the document based off of the attendees, the dates, and the actual summary notes down a specific pipeline. So let's say if you have a specific location for a client and you're talking to a client versus talking to your partners or internally, and they would be stored in a different location, you could do a ton of different things in terms of routing that logic accordingly. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to just focus on extracting the information and storing into our database and creating the tasks automatically. So for here, I'm probably going to do something like if node, probably a switch node actually. I have to think through it. But the idea here is we're going to have two things that we want to do. One is we're going to want to store the link document. Let's put this down here. So that's the first thing that we're going to want to do, and that's going to get a workflow of its own or a funnel of its own. And then secondly, we're going to want to use AI, and we're going to want to analyze content and create tasks. Let's turn this to green because we love AI as green. Okay. So from here, this is going to be this pipeline is going to be more robust because it involves actual sentiment analysis and actual tokens to determine what are the tasks, how to organize it, how to store it, who to assign it to, and how to give it or enrich it with the information that we would typically do or enrich a task with in our CRM manually. So that requires a lot of processing, right? And for this one above here where you're just storing a link, it's complete automation. There's no AI. You're just taking that link, going and finding the actual part in your database that you would want to store it into. So for me, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to create a separate sheet within a document and then store that link because that's how we store our meeting notes. And then we're allowed to kind of like leave our own manual notes under it. So what that would look like for me, I'd imagine, is something like, so first of all, with Google, you're going to need to, in terms of like adding links to documents, you need to make it a shareable doc. So for this case, I'd imagine the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get Google Drive node and make it public. And that's just going to be taking the actual ID of the document. There may be something where we may have to like get a link in here. Like, I don't know. I'd imagine there may be something where we have to go to Google Drive, search a document based off of the URL or some other field that we have, just to get the ID So this would be to get the ID. And then here, we would then funnel that back into here as like a secondary option if need be. So this is kind of like optional. Once you make the workflow or once you make the document public, shareable to anyone, then we can actually take that link and store it into our ClickUp instance. So actually what I'm thinking is, we don't want to store it in ClickUp. Let's just keep it simple. All right, and let's make this a cool color like brown or orange. Okay, so that's kind of like the simple workflow in terms of like storing the actual doc. So this is where it gets a little bit more robust here. So here we're gonna want to have one of two things. We're gonna need a system prompt. Let's make this white. So the system prompt is telling the AI how to act. So it's a static prompt that is dictating its behavior, right? So you would tell, for a teacher, for an example, you would tell a teacher that you need to be firm and grab control of the classroom, and that is consistent throughout every single class, right? So that would be like a system prompt. It's dictating it. It's telling the model how to act and how to handle the situation, and it is always going to follow that approach every single, no matter what the input or the instance is, right? So this is going to be the system prompt, and then for the user prompt, so this is where you're actually giving it the dynamic information for that specific run. So it uses the system prompt to basically handle the user prompt and efficiently execute the task accordingly. So going back to that teacher example, the user prompt would be something like a section that they're focusing on in class today, because that's always dynamic, that changes, but the teacher's approach in terms of how he teaches, how he ensures the students are paying attention are always going to be the same, give or take. You get what I'm saying? Good. So we're gonna have a user prompt, system prompt, and from here, we're going to want to extract a few things. So let's think about what we're going to extract. Extract. I would say we're going to want the actual task, task name. We're going to want the due date of the task, assignees. So who's assigned to the task? What else? Urgency. And this is going to be an enum type. Enum is just like a drop down of different options. So it's like, it's going to be low, normal. I think it's in ClickUp high, urgent, one of the four. And then what else? Is there anything else that we would want? And we can leave a note section. So let's say description, anything else that we would need. Okay. All right. So now that we know what we're going to extract, so this is a cool example, like given that this is something that we're going to extract no matter what the input of the actual meeting is, this is what we're always going to want to extract, right? The actual task, the due date, right? The content of the actual tasks. That would go into the system prompt because it's always going to follow this approach and extract this information no matter what the content of the meeting was, right? So it's a good way to kind of frame it. The user prompt would be, on the other hand, the actual content within the meeting notes, right? So like what was actually talked about, because that's dynamic, that's changing, but the model is always going to be taking those and extracting those necessary things, right? Or those necessary fields, which is task name, blah, 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 blah. All right, so from here, what we're going to need to do is once we have the actual task names, I'd imagine it's going to come up with a bunch of different tasks. Obviously, it depends on the kind of meeting and how robust the meeting was. So what I'm thinking is you're going to want to have some sort of loop node so loop is like a split into batches, it's also called. And what this does is, So what this does is it's just going to, so if you have a ton of items, so let's say it runs through we have a meeting, blah, 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 that goes through here. The model creates 10 different tasks and things to do. It will then send it here to this loop node, and the loop node will only send one of those tasks through. And my idea is to send only one of those through, store it in the CRM, then come back and then go to the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, and then wait until it goes through all 10 of them. And then we'll then move on with the rest of the workflow. I love doing this just because it just ensures that everything is operating efficiently and it reduces the amount of errors. Sometimes it's not the best practice, but in this case, given that I'm using ClickUp, that is a very robust tool and has a ton of different functionality, I like to ensure that we're not throwing in like 10 different items and asking it to store it all at once. So from here, it's going to be one item. And then I'd imagine we're going to literally just store it into ClickUp. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Now, I don't know if we're going to need like multiple tool calls for ClickUp if we want to like, what's it called? If we want to like, if you have to create a task, and if we want to like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm kind of blanking. But if we're creating a task, it may be a pain in the butt to, they may not let us actually assign the task to someone after it's created. So there's always little nuances, but hey, with n8n, you could always work around the issue. Okay, so this is kind of what we have. And like I said, you can get very robust with this and kind of like have some sort of routing based off of the content. Once you have extracted the information, you can kind of have fun with it and personalize it to your needs, which is what I do. But with that being said, let's get right into the build. All right, so like I said, you would typically utilize this Gemini notes. I personally just I just copy and pasted the actual Gemini notes or a similar email that I got from Gemini notes into my own email and sent it to myself and put my own email here just to kind of like, I don't want to have to start a meeting and then go through this process again. So here we are. We have the actual information, and as you can see, we got a bunch of gibberish sort of info, and that's okay because this is in markdown format, and if you don't know this already, LLMs actually understand markdown format and speak markdown format extremely well. So, oh no, this is HTML. So what we can do is they understand HTML as well because it's just like a software language or a formatting language. So with that being said, you can kind of alter it to markdown, but yeah, it's kind of ideal to get your text into this format, especially when you're getting some sort of analyze or sentiment analysis from the model. So with that being said, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look to actually extract the information. So what I do always is I do a set field. And what we can do here is let's see. We need all this data. There's a lot of different data. Okay. Now I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to try and route it. So with this, we have, so after analyzing a little bit, what I think we're going to do, and I think we should be able to do this, we should be able to literally forget all of the downloaded documents. We should be able to just pull this HTML, or this text. Let's pull both. And then what this is going to do is just going to clean up all the other gunk and only output these two fields. And what I'm looking for right now is I have the actual summary, which is all I really need to create the tasks. And then I'm just looking for that actual link, which is beautiful right here. Oh, that's like the summarization points. So I'm looking for that actual Google Doc link or Drive link, which is perfectly right here. And what that should get me is the link that I need to store into our ClickUp instance. So from here, we're going to, there's 3 items. Why is there 3 items? What are the 3 items? Okay. So from here, what we're going to do, so now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to extract the information into some sort of organized format. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. You could use a summarization chain, but what I'm going to be using, or you could just use a simple model. For my sake, I'm going to be using an information extractor because I can actually like create the fields that I want and explain what I want those fields to be. And so it'll analyze the actual input and then organize it into that specific format that I'm looking for. So in this case, I think the first thing that I want to do is I want to determine whether it is an internal meeting, whether it is a meeting with a client, or whether it is a discovery call. So for that sake, I'm going to say meeting type, and we're going to give it a simple description. Determine, let's say, determine whether the meeting content, whether the meeting falls into, whether the meeting is an internal meeting with team members, me members, a meeting with a client, or a discovery call with a potential client. Okay, so we'll make that required. We're going to add a second attribute. Now we're going to want, let's make it an object. Can I not make it? Okay, let's keep it a string then. I guess you can't make. Let's do tasks. Tasks. Contents of our conversation. So this part is like kind of, it's tedious. You're going to have to go in and work with the actual model to, what's it called? Ensure that the prompt is working consistently and effectively. I generally just start to get, I approach this by just getting something in here and then analyzing how it performs over time. But yeah, let's see if there's anything else. System prompt template. We will add a system prompt later. So for now, I think this is pretty good. We got meeting types. What else do we want? We want the date. I'm so frustrated you can't add an object in here, which is very frustrating. Let's say due date. Actionable tasks identified in the field, in the tasks field. Okay, and then we're going to want assignees. let's say, okay, required, let's see how it does. Oh, must be, I didn't attach the model. Let me attach a model. I love using OpenRouter. If you do not use OpenRouter, use OpenRouter. It is phenomenal. It's basically a centralized location for every single kind of model. Let's just stick with 4.1 for now. And let's see how she runs. Okay. Okay. Do I not have my, what the heck? All right, let's see how she runs. Okay, so we have an item, we have an output. Okay, meeting type, a meeting with the client, waiting for a client to approve sandbox instance of the database. Okay, so as you can see, you have to be very explicit in terms of what kind of format you want the tasks to be outputted in. As you can see, it kind of created a long text, which is not what we like. And it's also creating 3 items, which is not what we want. By sandbox, 100% accurate schedule meeting with the 3rd meeting of the month. Okay, so this is what we should be doing here is we want only 1 item to pass through. Let's see how this goes. It's still going to be 2 items. Why is it 3 items? So I'm just going to add a limit node here to only allow 1 item through. That way we don't run into this issue again. Can I add? So we can't do that. Okay. I'm going to go through here again. All right. So for now, that'll be okay. Oh, we're going to need the URL as well. Notes, URL. Okay. Google, say the Google Drive link for the meeting notes document. Okay. Let's see how this does. Awesome. And as you can see, we get the actual link. It should be good to go. Let's double check. There you go. So I need access. So this is where the fun part comes in. Why did it ask me for access? Oh, because I'm on this account. If I were to go over here, on the other hand, and go bang, there you go, the actual meeting notes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to send this down 2 different paths, kind of like we said over here, right? We have the actual 2 separate paths that we want to send things down. One is the actual sentiment or the actual task creation and then storing it into ClickUp. And then the other one is sharing, making sure the link is a public shareable link on Google Drive and then storing it into our ClickUp as well. So what we'll do first is we will send the, we will share that folder first. Let me go up here. I have to create a credential. Let's do it this way. Can I not just sign in? So unfortunately, I'm going to have to create a Google Drive API. So what this looks like is you're going to go to Google Cloud. This may give me a hard time because I haven't done this for this email. We should make a different account. I'm going to sign in. So this is a fun little trick here. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go to your API and services. didn't think I'd be covering this today. Okay, then you're gonna have to go to your library. We're gonna have to go to Google Drive. Google Drive API. Enable. Once you have enabled this, which may take a few seconds. Go ahead and enable these ones as well. All right, we've gotten the Google Drive credential set up, and if you want a video on how to do that, I can make a different one on a separate video. It's just too much information. Oh my God, it's still giving me a hard time. Let's sign in. Let's just do this now. All right, so I just went ahead and signed in. The proper way to do it is to go to Google Cloud Platform and set up your credentials, but this is just an interim build. So as you can see, I have our folders here. So what I'm going to want to do is, I'm going to want to do by URL. I'm not going to want to do a folder and do file. Then we're going to go notes URL. Should be by ID. No, we want to by URL. And then we're going to change the permission, role, reader, anyone, allow file discovery, sure, and email message, transfer ownership, use domain. So I think that's good. So we should be able to do that. Oh. As you can see, this is going to be a little bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a quick code that will extract the actual ID, because if you take this ID here, it should work great, right? So what I'll do here is we're going to add a quick code node. And whenever I write code, I just kind of use the model to figure it out. Do this. Always give an example. URL. Okay. And this generally tends to work pretty well. As you can see, bang, get that ID. And now you have a dynamic input that you can just slide it into there. Perfect. So now that the file is shareable, we're just gonna go into ClickUp, and do we get the actual file ID? Okay, do this. We'll merge information so that we keep that going. I use the merge node a lot just to be safe when handling the data. You can technically, when you're doing or identifying some sort of dynamic variable, you could reference a field in a previous node, but I've found that it breaks quite often. So I use merge nodes just to ensure that all the data is flowing into the node and it avoids any kind of bottleneck or issue. So from here, we should have all of that information. We're going to go to ClickUp. I'm going to change this to combined, all possible combinations, easy money. And now is the fun part. Now we need to set up our ClickUp credential. So from here, I'm doing a little bit of figuring it out. I have never worked with ClickUp with an n8n, but here we are. So we're going to want get many task, get a task. We should be able to create a task. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and create this credential. I'll be okay. So I just spent a good 30-40 minutes figuring out the ClickUp API. So it turns out they have two options when it comes to an API. So if I were to create a new one, you could either do an OAuth 2 or an access token. OAuth 2 is just like actually like signing in. It's kind of like when you sign in with Google. And that wasn't working, and apparently it's like deprecated, or not deprecated, it's just like not working efficiently between n8n and make.com. So then you go into the other options, the access token, which is the more efficient way, and there's two kind of like roadblocks you run into. So one, you have to be the space owner, but to create like a access token for the space, but you don't create an access token for the space. That creates an application with a client ID, client secret. What you need to do to utilize it personally is create an access token for yourself, and then that access token is found within the settings section of your personal profile. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom to my settings, especially if you're the workspace owner, then you would create an API token from there after putting in your personal password. No, this is the wrong. I'm just going to close this. Okay. So for this now, you should be able to, there you go. Create task, name or ID, flow matrix, yeah, workspace, beautiful. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the admin section, folder list, I don't know what that is. Admin section, folder name ID, we're going to go not folder, folder list, okay. Founders task, beautiful. So here we are. So now what we're going to need to do is, oh shoot, this isn't even creating a task. I'm doing this to the wrong section. So this would go down here for the second part of this. What we're going to need to here, do things. So why is my head over there? So doc. So an issue with this that I'm running into is that ClickUp does not actually allow you to document within their integration or the native API calls or integrations within n8n. So because this node only does so much, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to actually use HTTP requests to get into that particular document, which is our meetings document, and update one of these sub pages or create a sub page and update it with the actual link that we need. So this is going to be a little bit of a process, and I'm going to take you through. So first of all, we're going to need to get a bunch of IDs. So I'd imagine instead of like updating the folder, we're going to need to get the folder and get its necessary information. So as you can see, there you go. So yeah, it'll give us all the IDs that we'll need, and it gives you the actual, this is interesting. Folder ID, space ID, okay, statuses, deleted, lists, false, permission to create, okay. Interesting, okay. So what we're gonna have to do is go to the ClickUp. I'm on the ClickUp API docs. And what we should be able to do is go into here. And what we're going to look for is not views. Nothing with docs, attachments. API reference, okay. All right, so we should be able to go into folders, good folders, where's docs? List, users. Should be under locations. Walls, spaces, create space, okay, templates, workspaces, okay. No, not in here. So I'm going to struggle this out a little bit, and I will report back to you in a second. All right, so I found the location that we're going to be working with. So essentially what we're going to want to do is we're going to have to create a page on a document, which is just like a sub page. And then from there, we're going to want to actually update that page. So edit the page, I believe. All right, this is good. Okay, so now we have the actual documentation and there's path parameters. So what the path parameters, so how this works basically is we're going to go in here. We have the workspace ID. We have the folder ID. We need the space ID. So we're going to need the workspace ID and the doc ID. And then you want the parent page ID as well, which is what we need. And then the name of the new page, subtitle, content format. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm really just going to do this. Copy and paste this. Copy and paste this. Go back into our n8n. Create a little ClickUp Doc. Okay. And we're going to go, that's the call. And these are the parameters that we're going to need. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. This should be more than enough information. Okay. So we're going to need the actual workspace ID. Let's actually configure this in an HTTP request. So it's going to be a get. We're going to want to create a page. That's going to be post. No, yeah, that's a post call. So put this to post. And then we're going to want to pull that actual link and we're going to put it right in here. Bang it. So as you can see, these are the path parameters, and what a path parameter is essentially just the ID that you're going to want to put into the actual API URL call. And then there's query parameters, which are going to actually search with when you're in the actual path, I guess the section of the path. And then the headers are what you want to return, and the body is the more specific information you want to return or want to put or update. And so, okay. So here, we're going to want this, create a page. Okay, so workspace ID, I need to figure this out. I'm surprised there's no authentication, which is kind of crazy. So unfortunately, the audio cut off and stopped working up until this point. So I'll just kind of walk through how this will work and how what I did. So essentially, I went in and changed a few configuration parts or a few configuration elements of these fields. So instead of having the assignees, I turned it into just the people that were on the call. And for the tasks, I made the actual prompt or description more robust so that it outputs the actual task with the assignee and the date. And explicitly told it what format I wanted the date to be in. Right here. And as you can see, once it does this, it will eventually go to this code node, and the code node will organize it properly into multiple items, so separating all of the tasks that were created in this field, and separate each item into 3 distinct fields, which is the task name, the assignee, and the due date. And from there, that'll then move into a loop over items, which will then send one task at a time and actually input it into ClickUp. So to showcase to you what that looks like, so as you can see, there is the exact name here, wait for client, and provide sandbox instance. And if I go to my ClickUp and I scroll to the bottom, wait for client and provide sandbox instance. And then if I were to go through here and run the entire thing, we should see all 5 tasks be created. It's going through this again, but as you can see, it runs through one at a time, finish, and hit save. And if I scroll down here, you then see all the tasks that were created. And then for this part up here, if I were to create a page, so I'm going to go into my ClickUp instance, go to general, go to meetings. So this was the actual meeting that was created. So this is what it'll look like once the meeting is created. I'm going to go ahead and delete that and showcase to you what that looks like. It's going to go through the code, and then it's going to create that exact same meeting summary with the quick summary and the actual link to the Google Drive with the meeting notes. So yeah, there you have it. There's a lot of kind of modifications that you could do with this. This is just a simple workflow to solve one tiny problem to save me and my executive partners some time. But if you want to make it more robust, a couple things that come to mind is one, having a text classifier, so you can actually have AI come in here and classify the, text classifier. You could separate each one of these fields. You would drag the text into here so that it's analyzing this content, and then you could actually create the fields. So let's say if you want it to create tasks in a specific space for a specific person, or given a specific call, let's say you're talking with sales representatives versus your developing team versus internally with your executive team, and you want to have it organize it accordingly, you can create like a sales path and then describe these are calls with our sales reps, right? And then it would navigate it down a separate path and can kind of customize it accordingly. Another thing, or another, I guess the next level to this build is to create some sort of agentic system where you have an orchestrator agent that may do a bunch of other things, but the idea is to maybe connect this trigger to the orchestrator agent so it knows when it gets information from this trigger, it's getting the meeting notes from a Google Gemini, a Fathom, or whatever tool you use, and then can have sub agents that it can call to create those tasks and to update the information accordingly. You would just need to prompt that orchestrator agent to call those sub agents, and then prompt those sub agents and equip them with the necessary tools to essentially do what I did here. And that could be adding a page with the link, that could be creating tasks, more robust tasks. And I think with this approach, there's more variability, but there's also more of an opportunity to have AI actually enrich the task creation. Because if you look at our tasks here, the ones that it just generated, if you look here, they're pretty generic. They just have a normal urgency. They have a priority, but they're kind of like lacking in terms of the subfields. And that's where you could really play around with it. You can have it create subtasks as well. That's eventually where I would recommend going, but for the sake of this video, I just wanted to showcase me solving a problem or saving myself some time as an admin and an executive to win back a few hours every single week, or at least streamline the process of digesting the meeting notes and storing them and making them actionable within our CRM automatically, without us having to sit there, read through the notes, go over them, go back and forth, click and create these tasks manually. It'll automatically have it done, and it allows us to just go in and just enrich them the way we see best fit. Well, that's it for the video today, and I will be building a lot more and showcasing a lot more of the stuff that we build internally for clients, and also just on a personal level as well. How I utilize platforms like n8n, IDEs like Cursor, Kiro.dev, and actually AWS cloud computing, and how I use those various tools to A, provide value for our clients, but B, provide value and streamline our operations internally, but then C, also how I utilize these things to build some cool stuff personally to save myself some time, and also, I guess, enhance my abilities as an individual. So anyways, thank you for joining, and I will see you next time.